My name is Ryan Walker, and the night my marriage finally blinked truth, the music was still on and the guacamole was sweating under the pendant lights. I didn't plan a showdown, I planned a backyard barbecue with our friends, Taylor, Brandon, and Nicole. But the spark plug was Dylan, my wife Brittany's male best friend, a label that always sounded like a siren. He leaned against the fridge like he owned the mortgage, sipping my bourbon. Brittany floated beside him, laughing a little too hard, touching his sleeve. The punchline hit when he muttered loud enough for the room to tilt, "She's better off without you." Silence spread. I set the tongs down. I'm not theatrical. I like straight answers and a quiet Sunday game. But something in me stood up and rolled its shoulders. I stepped closer. "Say that again, Dylan." "Man, everybody's thinking it," he sneered, and Brittany's eyes flashed not with apology but with a dare. In that second, the reel ripped open. I saw the late nights working on her podcast, the brand new lingerie receipt, the hushed bathroom calls. A tape measure of lies unrolled across the tile. I shut him down in front of everyone, crisp as a slap. And then the night became a script I could never forget. My wife's male best friend disrespected me at my own house. "She's better off without you." When I shut him down in front of everyone, my wife snapped, "Apologize or we're over." I smiled, "Over it is, sweetheart." Chairs scraped. Taylor's beer tilted. Brandon whispered, "Holy," and didn't finish. Brittany pounded the countertop with her palm, face like marble. She was gorgeous, and a bitch. "Grow up, Ryan," she hissed. "You're embarrassing yourself." "Embarrassing would be letting this slide," I said. Sudden event 1, the Bluetooth speaker died mid-song, as if the house itself held its breath. 2, Nicole bumped the pantry and paper plates avalanched out, clattering like applause. 3, Dylan doubled down. "Look, man," he said, stepping toward me, "she needed someone who listens." "Someone who listens in hotel rooms?" I asked. I'd seen the Marriott Rewards email on our iPad, bright as proof. Brittany went pale, then furious. "Don't do this," she said. "Not here." "Where then?" I asked. "In your car?" "In his? Or do you have preferred lighting for intimacy talks?" Dylan scoffed. Brittany rolled her eyes. "You're paranoid," she said. "It's business." "Business with turn-down service," I said. Taylor tried to help. "Hey, guys, maybe." "Stay out of it," Brittany snapped, slicing the air. That's what she did when she lied, carved truth into thin, pretty pieces. She called me controlling for asking where she'd been, unromantic for wanting receipts, insecure for noticing she smelled like someone else's body wash at midnight. Dylan looked at her with something feral and misplaced. "You deserve better," he murmured. "Better," I said, "doesn't show up in my kitchen and spit on my shoes." He grinned. "Then take them off." Brandon put a hand on my shoulder, but I didn't need restraining. I needed clarity. It arrived like a thunderclap. I didn't have to win. I just had to stop playing. "Everyone out," I said, not shouting, just done. The room shuffled, the way people do when a train finds its track. Taylor and Nicole drifted to the door. Brandon grabbed his keys. Dylan lingered, until Brittany, my wife, touched his wrist and said, "I've got this." She turned to me with that practiced smirk. "Apologize." I laughed. "For what? For refusing to be the punchline at my own party? For noticing the H-cup perfume and the hotel points?" Her chin lifted. "You're making stories." "Then tell one that makes sense," I said. She planted her hands on her hips and looked past me like I was furniture. "You never paid attention." Dylan did. "And I paid the mortgage," I said. "I also paid for that dress you're using like a flare gun." Her eyes flashed. "Apologize or we're over." I felt a private click inside, like a door latching. Over it is, sweetheart. Sudden event 4, lightning outside. The sky cracked open and rain slapped the windows. Everyone flinched. I didn't. For the first time in months, the noise in my skull turned into one clean note. I switched off the speaker, set the tongs beside the guacamole, and looked at the woman I'd loved since college. She looked back like a stranger who'd just realized her ride was leaving without her. And still, she smirked, daring me to fold. That was the moment it all began, not with revelation, but with a resignation that tasted like rain and bourbon. I was done being lied to in my own kitchen. The door, open, waited for the next storm. Rain hammered the siding while the last car taillights bled down the street. I locked the door, set my phone face up on the counter, and listened to the house breathe like it had a bruise. Brittany stomped upstairs, heels jabbing the steps, each click a verdict. "You're pathetic," she tossed over her shoulder, then the bedroom door slammed. The storm cracked again. That was sudden event 1, thunder tripping the power for a blink, just long enough to turn the kitchen into a mirror where I saw a man who'd stopped pretending. I moved like a paramedic through our life. The iPad on the coffee table, open. A bubble of Marriott points glowed in the notifications. Tap. A neatly folded spreadsheet of stays under, savvy creator retreats. Dates that line danced with her, late night editing. Cities I never visited, Austin, Phoenix, Seattle. I scrolled, throat dry. Guess 2. Initials DJ Dylan James. Of course. Sudden event 2, her Apple Watch on the charger buzzed to life, lighting the room with an incoming message. From D, an orange heart and a hotel door emoji. I didn't touch it. I didn't need to. The truth was loud enough to call the cops. Brittany shouted from upstairs, "Don't snoop, Ryan." Not, "There's nothing to see." Not, "I love you." Just a warning, like I was trespassing inside my own chest. I opened the pantry for air and a box toppled, raining party straws. I stared at the mess and thought of all the times she'd called me clingy for asking where she'd been, of the new silk robe that arrived with no tag, of the perfume that smelled like ripe fruit and alibi. She had rebranded betrayal as independence, and I had clapped for the graphic design. I took the trash out, anything to reset, when sudden event 3 arrived. An Uber driver rolled down his window at the curb. "Brittany?" he asked, peering past me. "Airport run?" He checked his app. Dylan's note says, he stopped at my face. My pulse clicked. "Wrong house," I said, and the guy drifted off, tires whispering cowardice against wet asphalt. Back inside, I followed the dotted line of carelessness. Her tote slumped by the stairs, gaping like a mouth. Inside, the same orange heart perfume, a receipt for room service, 2 entrees, 1 dessert with 2 spoons, signed with a flourish that wasn't mine. There was also a keycard sleeve branded with a hotel logo and a sharpened note, "Use side elevator. No selfies." I laughed, an ugly noise, and placed it on the hall table like evidence for an invisible jury. Upstairs, I found our bed crisp as a hotel corner, my side made. In the bathroom, the mirror was fog-blurred from her shower. Her lipstick, a cruel cherry, looped across the glass. "Do better." Not, "I'm sorry." Not even, "Goodbye." Do better. Sudden event 4, my phone chimed. Taylor texted, "You okay, man?" Then Brandon, "He's slime." We saw enough. Nicole sent a photo from earlier, Brittany and Dylan shoulder to shoulder, his hand at her lower back, her eyes tilted into a private joke. I enlarged it until the pixels broke. Brittany stepped into the doorway in a robe, arms crossed, chin lifted like a queen reviewing a peasant. "Well," she said. "Finished playing detective?" "Finished," I said, voice steady. "Now I'm documenting." She smirked. "You always loved homework." Then, without shame, I needed intimacy, Ryan. Real attention. You gave me routines. You needed H-cup points, I said, holding up the iPad. And a side elevator. Her eyes iced over. You're dramatic. No, I said. I'm awake. Lightning wrote its signature across the blinds. Somewhere a car alarm started, as if the neighborhood wanted a soundtrack. I gathered the receipts, the keycard sleeve, took photos like a tourist of my own collapse. Every click steadied me. The story wasn't a rumor anymore. It was timestamps and room numbers and orange hearts. It was my wife, Brittany Walker, choosing Dylan James, the man who'd told me to my face she was better off without me. And it was me, standing in the doorway of a life I'd cleaned, funded, believed in, realizing belief needs evidence too. The storm outside was only a cheap imitation of what lived between the walls of our house that night. I stood in the bedroom doorway, holding her hotel keycard sleeve like it was radioactive, and Brittany sat at the edge of the bed, arms folded, eyes sharp enough to shave the air. She looked like a woman waiting for an intern to fetch her coffee, not a wife caught red-handed. You want to explain this? I asked, my voice low, steady. My chest felt like a jackhammer, but I refused to give her the scream she was baiting for. She didn't even glance at the evidence. Ryan, it's a room key. People travel. People have friends. Don't twist it into some Lifetime movie drama. I tossed it onto the comforter between us. With Dylan's initials on the guest list? With side elevator instructions? Come on, Brittany. At least respect me enough to lie better. She scoffed, flipping her hair. God, you're so insecure. I can't even talk to another man without you writing a novel in your head. Insecure? I barked a laugh. You're telling me the Uber driver showing up for your airport run was a coincidence? The texts? The receipts? The Marriott points stacked like trophies? That's not my insecurity. That's your affair screaming through every crack in the drywall. Her face hardened, lips curling. So what if I did? Maybe I wanted to feel alive for once. You wouldn't understand. You're too busy counting pennies and watching sports to notice I exist. That was the slap. She didn't swing her hand, but the words hit harder than any palm could. My throat closed for a second. Then I steadied. I noticed. I noticed the perfume, the excuses, the way you stopped kissing me like you meant it. I noticed everything, Brittany. And I stayed. I worked. I believed. And you, I pointed at the keycard, you chose this. She shot to her feet, robe flaring. Don't make me the villain. Dylan actually listens. He says I'm smart, talented, beautiful. You? You treat me like a roommate with benefits. Benefits. My fists curled. I thought of the groceries, the mortgage, the nights I rubbed her shoulders while she typed fake deadlines. All the routines she mocked were the bones of her comfort. Sudden event 1, my phone rang, buzzing on the dresser. Caller ID, Dylan. Like fate couldn't resist tightening the knife. I answered on speaker. Britt, his voice slurred with arrogance. Room's ready if you're coming. Side elevator like usual. Don't let him guilt trip you. I looked at her. She froze, then lunged for the phone. I ended the call, hand steady. There it is, I whispered. The uncut version. Her eyes blazed. You set me up. No, I said. You set yourself up. I just stopped covering the tracks. Sudden event 2, the power blinked again, plunging us into darkness for 3 seconds before the lights revived. In that brief blackout, I swear I heard her mutter, should have left sooner. When the lights came back, she was already pacing. You're pathetic. You'll never find anyone better. Who's going to want you? At least Dylan sees my worth. I laughed, bitter. Yeah, he sees it, hourly rate, hotel minibar, side elevator. That's not worth. That's usage. Her face twisted, a cocktail of rage and fear. She pointed at me like a judge. Apologize, Ryan. Right now. Apologize for humiliating me in front of everyone. Or we're finished. I smiled, cold, calm. We're already finished, sweetheart. You just didn't have the guts to say it first. Sudden event 3, she grabbed the lamp and hurled it against the wall. It shattered, sparks spitting. My heart thudded, but I didn't flinch. I just looked at her, the woman I once believed was my forever, and saw a stranger standing in my shirt and her own lies. That was the confrontation. No fists, no police. Just two people in a room, finally stripped of costumes. And in the silence after the crash, I realized she had no explanation. No excuse left. Only venom. And venom doesn't heal. It poisons until you walk away. When the lamp exploded against the wall, it wasn't just glass that shattered. Something inside me cracked clean through, the kind of break you don't glue back together. I stood there, staring at shards glittering like frozen stars on the carpet, and for the first time in years I felt hollow. Not numb. Hollow. Like someone had scooped out everything soft inside me and left a cold echo chamber where my heart used to live. Brittany stood in the middle of the wreckage, chest rising and falling, lips tight. She expected me to scream, maybe cry, maybe beg. That's her game, draw the fight, feed off the drama. But I didn't give her that. I just sank down on the edge of the bed, elbows on my knees, palms pressed together like a man praying to a god that had already turned his back. The shock came first. It was sharp, metallic. My ears rang. My body kept replaying Dylan's voice from the phone, "Room's ready if you're coming." Those words burned into me like a cattle brand. I couldn't scrub them out. I imagined them together in those bland hotel rooms, her laugh, the same laugh I used to chase like sunlight, now twisted into someone else's soundtrack. Then anger hit, hot and wild, rushing through my veins like a forest fire. I clenched my fists until my nails dug crescents into my skin. Years of sacrifice, late nights at work, cutting corners so she could buy creative tools, putting her first even when I was drained, burned like receipts in that fire. She called me boring, unromantic, predictable. But it was my predictability that gave her the safety net to run around with her side elevator clown. Sudden event 1, I tried to stand, but my knees buckled. The room swayed, and for a heartbeat I thought I'd faint. My body didn't know whether to fight or collapse. I gripped the mattress, breathing like a man trapped under rubble. Sadness followed, slower, heavier. It sat on my shoulders like a wet coat. Every memory stabbed, our wedding dance, her hand squeezing mine when my father died, the time she cried in my arms after losing her job. Were those moments real? Or just rehearsals for a role she'd long since quit? My chest ached with the thought that I'd been the only one who believed in forever. Sudden event 2, my phone buzzed with a new message, this time from Nicole. "Ryan, if you need a place tonight, come here. Don't stay in that house with her." The kindness in those words nearly broke me more than Brittany's cruelty. It reminded me I wasn't insane, that someone else saw the truth. Meanwhile, Brittany lit a cigarette by the window, blowing smoke like she was starring in some indie film about misunderstood wives. "You'll thank me one day," she said coldly. "I set you free." That line drilled through me. Free? I hadn't asked for freedom. I wanted loyalty. Love. A partner, not a saboteur. And yet, sitting there in the rubble, I realized she was right in a twisted way. Her betrayal was freedom, painful, violent, but real freedom. Sudden event 3, the smoke alarm shrieked, triggered by her cigarette. I yanked it down, tossed it onto the bed, its beeping muffled under a pillow. She laughed, cruel and careless. I sat back down, sweat damp on my temples, and whispered to myself, this is the bottom. This is where you either break or rebuild. Acceptance hadn't arrived yet. Not fully. But the seed was there, buried under rage and sorrow. And as Brittany smirked into the glass reflection, puffing smoke like a villain in her own cheap play, I knew one thing: she hadn't broken me completely. Not yet. And if I held on, she never would. The morning after the storm felt like walking into someone else's house. The walls were the same, the photos on the mantel still showed our frozen smiles, but the air had shifted. It smelled of stale smoke and lies. Brittany was still asleep, sprawled diagonally across the bed like a queen after battle, robe half open, hair tangled. I watched her for a moment, not with love, not even with hate, just with clarity. I had two choices. Stay and rot in the swamp she'd built. Or walk out and reclaim the skin of my own life. Sudden event 1. My phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't friends, it was my boss, texting at 6 a.m., heard about last night. Taylor filled me in. Take time off if you need it, man. Don't come in today. The fact that the news had already spread beyond my circle hit me like a cold bucket of water. My humiliation wasn't private anymore. Everyone knew. And still, my boss showed more care in 6 words than my wife had in months. I showered, dressed quietly, and began packing a duffel bag. Not clothes for forever, just essentials. Socks, jeans, a couple of shirts. My toothbrush. Every zip of the bag was a decision etched in fabric. Brittany stirred when I pulled my shoes from the closet. Where are you going? She mumbled, voice rough. Out, I said simply. She sat up, eyes narrowing. You're really doing this? Walking away like some martyr? You think anyone will believe you're the victim? Please. Her tone was venom disguised as arrogance. She wanted me to doubt myself, to crawl back into the trap. But I'd had enough of her manipulation. I don't need them to believe me, I said. I've got the receipts, the texts, Dylan's drunk phone call. I know the truth. That's enough. She scoffed, rolling her eyes. You'll be crawling back in a week. Men like you can't handle being alone. Sudden event 2. As if to punctuate her cruelty, Dylan called again. His name flashed across the screen. I let it ring out, but Brittany grabbed the phone off the dresser, answered it on speaker, and purred, "Morning, baby." I laughed, an ugly, hollow sound. You two deserve each other, I said, slinging the bag over my shoulder. Her face twisted. You'll regret this. I'm the best you'll ever have. I paused at the door, looking back one last time. If this is the best, then thank God it's over. Sudden event 3, as I stepped into the hallway, a picture frame fell from the wall. Our wedding photo. The glass cracked straight down the middle, slicing her smile from mine. I didn't pick it up. I just walked past it, the symbolism too loud to ignore. Downstairs, I grabbed my car keys from the counter. Nicole had texted again, "Come stay here. We'll get you through this." That was my lifeline. Not Brittany, not the wreck of what we'd been. My friends, my sanity, my own strength. Driving away, I didn't cry. The tears had burned out last night. Instead, I felt a strange calm, the kind you feel when you finally sign discharge papers at the hospital. You're still weak, still scarred, but you're free from the sickroom. My decision was made. Divorce. Not negotiation, not therapy, not second chances. Just a clean cut. Brittany had demanded an apology or we're over. I had given her the latter. And this time, I wasn't bluffing. For the first time in months, maybe years, I smiled at my own reflection in the rearview mirror. It wasn't joy yet, but it was relief. The road ahead was jagged, but at least it was mine. And I promised myself, never again would I ignore the smoke while someone else lit the fire in my own house. Leaving was the easy part. What came after was the real storm. I spent the first night on Nicole's couch, staring at the ceiling fan spin shadows across the wall. She handed me a blanket, a beer, and said, "You did the right thing." I wanted to believe her. But the silence after midnight was brutal. It was the silence of an empty side of the bed, of vows twisted into jokes, of trust torn apart like old paper. Sudden event 1, around 2 a.m., my phone buzzed with 20 missed calls from Brittany. No voicemails, just calls stacked like bricks of desperation or control. The next morning, texts rolled in, "Come home. We need to talk." Then, "You're overreacting." Then, "If you walk away, don't expect me to beg." And finally, "Dylan says you'll regret this." That last one made me laugh out loud, bitter and sharp. She wasn't even hiding it anymore. She was parading her betrayal like a prize pig at the county fair. I screenshotted everything, saved it to a folder called Truth. Evidence wasn't about revenge, it was about survival. I knew Brittany would spin the story, paint me as unstable, controlling, boring. But screenshots don't lie. At work, people whispered. Taylor clapped me on the back. Brandon offered beers, but the pity in their eyes was a new kind of wound. Being cheated on wasn't just private heartbreak, it was public humiliation. My pride limped everywhere I went. Brittany, meanwhile, turned vicious. Sudden event 2, she showed up at my office unannounced, storming through the lobby in high heels and a red dress meant to scream power. "Ryan, stop this childish act," she hissed, loud enough for my coworkers to hear. "Come home before I make you look pathetic." I stood tall, even though my insides twisted. "We're done, Brittany. Go play queen somewhere else." Her eyes narrowed. "Fine. Then you'll pay for it." And she spun out of the building, leaving whispers in her wake. Nicole and I started joking darkly about her as Hurricane Brittany. Because that's what she was, tearing through lives, leaving wreckage, demanding attention. But jokes didn't soften the reality. Sudden event 3, Dylan himself texted me. "She chose me. Stop clinging to what's dead." I stared at the screen, fingers itching to punch through it. Instead, I wrote back one line, "Enjoy the side elevator." Then I blocked him. Nights were hardest. My mind replayed everything, our wedding vows, the time she whispered "forever" into my neck, the laugh she only used with Dylan. Anger and sadness tag-teamed me until I was exhausted. But something surprising happened, too. Amid the ashes, I started noticing the small freedoms. No cigarette smoke in my house. No fake deadlines to cover up. No tiptoeing around her moods. My meals were quiet, my evenings honest. It wasn't joy yet, but it was peace. One evening, Brandon said, "Man, she did you dirty. But maybe she did you a favor too." I hated to admit it, but he was right. Brittany's betrayal was brutal, yes, but it was also a jailbreak. And slowly, step by step, I realized, I wasn't just losing a wife. I was losing a parasite that fed on my patience, my love, my loyalty. And in that loss, I was finally beginning to win something back, myself. Weeks slid into months, each one peeling Brittany further from my skin. The divorce papers were filed. The lawyers spoke for us because any conversation between her and me quickly turned into venom. I stopped answering her texts, stopped reacting to her late-night calls where she'd scream 1 minute and purr the next. She was like a broken faucet, drip, gush, dry. I shut the water off for good. The first real breath of freedom came on a Sunday. I woke up on Nicole's couch again, sunlight warming my face. For the first time in years, I didn't feel the dread of checking my phone for Brittany's mood swings. I made coffee, sat by the window, and let the quiet wrap around me. That's when it hit me, silence wasn't punishment anymore. It was peace. Sudden event 1, I found the old guitar I hadn't touched in years, dusty in the back of my closet at Nicole's. I strummed until my fingers hurt. Music poured out, messy and raw, but it was mine. Brittany had always rolled her eyes when I played, said it was noise. Now it was oxygen. At work, I threw myself into projects. My boss, Mark, pulled me aside one afternoon. "You've been sharper lately, Ryan. Focused. Like a weight's off your back." He didn't know how right he was. Even my coworkers noticed. I smiled more, cracked jokes, actually joined them for after-work drinks instead of rushing home to the chaos Brittany cultivated. Still, healing wasn't a straight line. Sudden event 2, I bumped into Brittany at the grocery store. She was with Dylan, arm hooked through his, smirking like she owned the world. "Look who's slumming it with frozen pizzas," she sneered. Dylan chuckled, puffing out his chest. I stared at them, heart pounding, but instead of rage, I felt pity. They looked desperate, propped up by lies and bravado. "Enjoy the circus," I said calmly, pushing my cart past them. Their laughter trailed behind me, but it didn't cut anymore. It just sounded hollow. That night, Nicole asked, "Did it hurt seeing them?" I thought about it, then shook my head. No. It confirmed I made the right choice. Let her have him. They deserve each other's emptiness. Sudden event 3, Nicole threw a small party a week later, nothing fancy. Just friends, music, beer. At one point, I found myself laughing so hard my stomach hurt, surrounded by people who actually respected me. And I realized, I hadn't laughed like that in years. Brittany had drained the joy out of me drop by drop, so slowly I didn't notice until she was gone. In the quiet moments, sadness still crept in. But it wasn't sadness for losing her, it was sadness for losing who I thought she was. I mourned the illusion, not the reality. The rebuilding wasn't glamorous. It was messy, slow, uneven. But every day, I laid another brick, trust in myself, pride in my choices, strength in my own voice. And one morning, as the sun cracked open the horizon, I caught my reflection in the mirror. For the first time since the storm, I recognized the man looking back. Not a victim. Not a fool. Just Ryan Walker, scarred, but standing. And that was enough. By the time the divorce papers were signed, the war inside me had quieted. I thought the final signature would feel like ripping a bandage, but it was more like closing a heavy book I'd carried too long. Brittany showed up at the courthouse in a designer dress, sunglasses big enough to hide behind, Dylan lurking 2 steps behind her like a guard dog. She smirked when she signed, like she'd won something. I didn't smirk back. I just signed, slid the pen across the table, and walked away without looking back. Sudden event 1, Dylan tried to mutter some slick comment as I passed, "Told you she was better off without you." But instead of exploding, I smiled, steady and calm. "Better off without both of us, eventually," I said. He frowned, confused, and I left him standing in his own shadow. That was the first real victory, not shouting, not fighting, just refusing to play their game. The days after felt lighter. My apartment was small, but it was mine. No cigarette smoke, no slammed doors, no constant suspicion. Just my guitar leaning in the corner, my coffee brewing, my peace. I learned how much space Brittany had taken, not just in my house, but in my head. And with her gone, I started filling that space with myself again. The emotional scars still pulsed sometimes. I'd wake at night, flashes of her lipstick on the mirror, her laughter with Dylan, the way she screamed "apologize or we're over." Those echoes hurt, but they also reminded me of the line I finally drew. I had chosen dignity over despair. Sudden event 2, one evening, Taylor, Brandon, and Nicole dragged me out to a bar. Just a regular Friday night. Music, laughter, clinking glasses. At one point, Nicole leaned over and said, "You know, Ryan, you're different now. Stronger. Like you finally see yourself." That stuck with me. Maybe Brittany thought she broke me, but in truth, she sharpened me. The biggest lesson? Betrayal doesn't define you. How you rise after it does. Brittany was a bitch, yes, manipulative, cruel, selfish. But she also became my harshest teacher. She taught me that blind loyalty is a slow poison, that respect matters more than romance, and that sometimes love is just a costume people wear until it no longer fits them. Sudden Event 3, a message popped up on my phone one morning. Unknown number. Miss me? I didn't even have to guess who it was. I deleted it without responding. That, more than anything, was closure. I wasn't tempted. I wasn't angry. I was free. So here I stand, months later, telling this story not as a man broken, but as a man rebuilt. If I had to give advice to anyone standing where I once stood, it would be this: don't ignore the small lies, they grow teeth. Don't beg someone to love you, they either do or they don't. And when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. My wife's best friend once told me she was better off without me. Brittany demanded I apologize or we were over. I smiled, said over it is, sweetheart, and walked into the storm. What I didn't realize then was that storm wasn't my ending. It was my beginning.